You've asked this question your entire life. So have scientists. So has every curious mind that's ever stared at museum skeletons and wondered where we came from. What was the first human species? The question seems simple enough. There should be a clear answer, a moment when humanity began. A species we can point to and say, there, that's when apes became us. But after decades of digging through Africa's ancient sediments, paleontologists have discovered that the question itself is wrong. The search for our origins reveals a truth more profound and disturbing than any clean answer. We emerged not through sudden transformation, but through millions of years of gradual becoming, each fossil a transitional form caught between what we were and what we would become. The obsession began in the 1960s when the Leakey family started pulling hominin bones from East Africa's ancient lake beds. Each discovery promised to answer the ultimate question: which species deserves the title first human? But every fossil only deepened the mystery. Definitions collided with reality. Expectations shattered against evidence. Scientists tried different criteria: walking upright, brain size; tool use, fire control. Each definition pointed to a different ancestor, a different moment of origin. The problem wasn't the fossils, it was the question itself. Evolution doesn't recognize our categories. It doesn't care about the human need for clean boundaries and decisive moments. The term hominin describes every species on our branch after we split from the ancestors of chimpanzees and bonobos around 7 million years ago. All humans are hominins, but not all hominins qualify as human. That distinction belongs to our genus, Homo. Yet even here, the boundaries blur. Some Homo species retained primitive features. Some pre-Homo species showed remarkably human behaviors. The search for the first human became a search for something that never existed, a moment when one type of creature gave birth to something fundamentally different. Nature doesn't work in such dramatic gestures. It works through gradual accumulation, subtle shifts, and imperceptible transitions stretched across geological time. 7 million years ago, Africa began dying through slow strangulation. The planet cooled, rainfall patterns shifted. The dense tropical forests that had blanketed much of Africa for tens of millions of years began to fragment. What had once been a continuous green canopy, teeming with primates and other wildlife, splintered into isolated forest patches, separated by an ever-expanding sea of grassland. This was the beginning of a long ecological transformation that would last millions of years. This environmental catastrophe created the crucible in which human evolution would be forged. Tree-dwelling apes that had thrived in the safety of a continuous canopy suddenly confronted a harsh new reality. Their food sources, clusters of fruit-bearing trees, were no longer within easy reach. Where an ape could once swing effortlessly from branch to branch through an unending treetop highway, it now faced long, dangerous gaps of open ground. Fossil evidence, such as Sahelanthropus chadensis, discovered in Chad and dated to about 7 million years ago, provides one of the earliest glimpses of this transitional period. With a mix of ape-like features and possible adaptations for upright posture, it reflects the pressures of this new, fragmented world. The survivors needed to travel efficiently between these scattered resource patches. Knuckle walking, like modern chimpanzees, consumes enormous energy over long distances and leaves one vulnerable in the open savanna. But bipedalism, walking upright on 2 legs, proved remarkably efficient for covering ground. It also freed the hands to carry food, tools, or infants, advantages that became critical for survival. Fossils like Ororhyntogonensis from Kenya, about 6 million years ago, and Ardipithecus ramidus from Ethiopia, around 4.4 million years ago, show early experiments in upright walking, marking the gradual shift from arboreal life to life on the ground. Natural selection does not plan, but it ruthlessly rewards efficiency, and those who could endure the trek between trees had a better chance of survival. The savanna didn't create bipedalism instantly. The transition stretched over millions of years as forests continued shrinking and hominin ancestors adapted to increasingly open landscapes. Each generation that could walk a little farther, carry a little more, or survive a little longer, in the expanding grasslands pass those advantages to their offspring. This environmental pressure would shape every aspect of human evolution. Our upright posture, our efficient long-distance stride, our complex social behaviors, our tool use, all trace back to Africa's changing climate and the brutal mathematics of survival in fragmented landscapes. The skull emerged from Chad's Jurub Desert in 2001, crushed and distorted, but unmistakably ancient. Scientists named it Tumai, meaning hope of life in the local language. The fossil belonged to Sahelanthropus chidensis, a creature that lived between 6 and 7 million years ago in what was then a mosaic of lakes, rivers, and woodland. Tumai's skull held a crucial secret. At the base of every primate skull lies the foramen magnum, the hole where the spinal cord connects to the brain. In knuckle-walking apes, this opening sits toward the back of the skull, allowing the spine to angle up from behind. In modern humans, it sits directly beneath the skull, balancing the head atop an upright spine. Tumai's foramen magnum had shifted forward, a clear sign of upright posture. This creature held its head erect and likely walked on 2 legs. Yet in every other way, Sahelanthropus remained thoroughly ape-like. Its brain measured only 350 cubic centimeters, smaller than a modern chimp's. It had a massive brow ridge and a projecting face filled with large teeth. The discovery shattered assumptions about human origins. Bipedalism didn't evolve on the open savanna as long believed. It emerged in woodlands, perhaps as an adaptation for reaching food in scattered trees or for carrying resources between forest patches. The first human trait appeared in creatures that were otherwise still apes. Sahelanthropus represents the beginning of our lineage's great experiment. Can an ape learn to walk like a human while retaining everything else that makes it an ape? The answer would take millions of years to fully unfold. 4.5 million years ago, in what is now Ethiopia, a female hominin died beside an ancient lake. Her skeleton, later nicknamed Arti, would reveal how evolution conducts its experiments, not through dramatic leaps, but through careful tinkering with existing designs. Ardipithecus ramidus lived in dense woodland, not open grassland. Her world teemed with fig trees, hackberry bushes, and other forest vegetation. She inhabited the margins between 2 worlds, the ancestral realm of the trees and the emerging domain of the ground. Arti's anatomy reflected this transitional lifestyle. Her pelvis was shorter and broader than a chimp's, allowing her to walk upright when necessary. But she retained extremely long arms and curved fingers, perfect for tree climbing. Most tellingly, she had a divergent big toe that worked like a thumb, allowing her to grasp branches securely. She was what scientists call a facultative biped, comfortable walking on the ground, but equally at home in the trees. Her teeth suggest a diet of soft fruits and other forest foods that required little chewing. She lived in a world where the forest canopy was already broken, but trees still provided safety, food, and shelter. Ardipithecus represents millions of years of evolutionary experimentation. Our ancestors didn't abandon their arboreal heritage instantly. They hedged their bets, keeping 1 foot on the ground and 1 hand in the trees. They were neither fully ape nor fully human, but something in between, perfectly adapted for a world that was itself in transition. This discovery overturned the savanna hypothesis that had dominated paleoanthropology for decades. Bipedalism didn't evolve as a response to open grasslands, but emerged while our ancestors still lived among trees. The ability to walk upright was an innovation that preceded our commitment to terrestrial life. The volcanic ash preserved them for eternity, 2 sets of footprints walking across what would become Laetoli, Tanzania, 3.6 million years ago. The tracks show 2 hominins, likely a male and female, walking side by side across the African landscape. Their footprints reveal unmistakably modern features, a pronounced arch, a heel-strike gait, and a non-grasping big toe aligned with the other toes. These tracks belong to the world of Australopithecus afarensis, the species that includes Lucy, perhaps the most famous early hominin fossil ever discovered. Lucy's skeleton, found in Ethiopia's Afar Depression, proved that by 3 million years ago, our ancestors had perfected bipedal locomotion. Her hip and knee joints worked exactly like those of modern humans. Yet Lucy retained distinctly ape-like features in her upper body. Her arms were long and powerful, her fingers curved for grasping. Her skull housed a brain only slightly larger than a chimp's, around 400 to 500 cubic centimeters. Her face projected forward with a heavy jaw, designed for processing tough, fibrous plant foods. The Australopithecines thrived across Africa for over 2 million years, adapting to environments that ranged from dense woodlands to increasingly open savannas. They were generalist foragers with large molars, perfect for grinding nuts, seeds, tubers, and other challenging plant foods. They combined the efficiency of bipedal travel with the flexibility to exploit diverse food sources. But in 2015, archaeologists working in Kenya made a discovery that shattered conventional thinking about human origins. Buried in sediments 3.3 million years old, they found stone tools, massive flakes knocked from cores with deliberate precision. The Lomequion tools, as they became known, predate the earliest fossils of the genus Homo by 500,000 years. The toolmakers were almost certainly Australopithecines, possibly Australopithecus afarensis, or the mysterious Kenyanthropus platyops. This means that the cognitive ability to see a sharp cutting edge hidden inside a rock and the motor skills to extract it existed before human brains evolved. Tool use, long considered the defining trait of genus Homo, had deeper and more ancient roots. Around 2.8 million years ago, something new appeared in the African fossil record, a hominin with a flatter face, smaller teeth, and a noticeably larger brain. The climate was changing again, becoming cooler and more variable. These fluctuations favored intelligence and adaptability over specialized physical traits. Homo habilis earned its nickname handyman through its association with the Oldowan tool industry. These weren't the crude flakes of the Lomequion tradition, but sophisticated implements created through systematic stone knapping techniques. The toolmaker would select a suitable core stone and use a hammer stone to strike off sharp flakes in a controlled sequence. The tool served a specific purpose: processing animal carcasses. The sharp flakes could slice meat from bone with surgical precision. The heavy cores could crack open long bones to access the calorie-rich marrow inside. Homo habilis had discovered the ultimate superfood, animal fat and protein, that provided far more energy per bite than any plant food. This discovery triggered a revolution in hominin evolution. The brain is metabolically expensive, consuming about 20% of our daily energy budget, despite representing only 2% of our body weight. Access to energy-dense animal foods provided the fuel necessary to power larger brains. A feedback loop emerged. Better tools led to better food, which enabled bigger brains, which could conceive of even better tools. Homo habilis averaged around 610 cubic centimeters of brain volume, a 20 to 30% increase over the Australopithecines. Their skulls showed the first hints of asymmetry that characterizes modern human brains, suggesting the beginning of specialized brain regions for tool use and perhaps even primitive language. Yet their bodies remained surprisingly primitive. They retained the long arms and short legs of their Australopithecine ancestors, suggesting they were not yet efficient long-distance travelers. Some scientists argue that these features make habilis better classified as a late, large-brained Australopithecine, rather than a true member of the genus Homo. The debate reflects the arbitrary nature of scientific classification. Evolution doesn't recognize genus boundaries. Homo habilis, whatever we call it, represents a crucial threshold in our cognitive evolution. These hominins had mastered the art of systematic tool production and discovered how to extract high-energy foods from their environment. They initiated the feedback loop between technology and brain size that defines human evolution. Yet the very existence of this debate illustrates why the search for the first human remains so elusive. If scientists cannot agree whether habilis belongs in our genus or represents a late Australopithecine, how can we expect a clear answer to when humanity began? The fossils themselves seem to resist our attempts at categorization, displaying mosaic combinations of primitive and derived traits that blur the boundaries we desperately want to draw. The skeleton lay in the sediments of Kenya's Lake Turkana, nearly complete and perfectly preserved. Scientists called him Turkana Boy, an adolescent Homo erectus who died 1.6 million years ago. From the neck down, he looked unmistakably human. Long legs built for efficient striding, short arms no longer adapted for tree climbing, a pelvis and spine configured for endurance walking, and possibly even long-distance running. Homo erectus represents the culmination of human evolution's first great experiment. They were the first hominins to evolve a truly modern body plan, perfectly designed for life on the ground and travel across vast landscapes. If you encountered an erectus from behind, you would recognize the silhouette as human. Their brain size grew dramatically over their nearly 2 million years of existence, starting around 600 cubic centimeters and reaching over 1,000 cubic centimeters in later specimens. This places them well within the lower range of modern human brain sizes. Their skulls were long and low with prominent brow ridges, but their faces had flattened significantly compared to earlier hominins. The Acheulean tool industry that Homo erectus invented required unprecedented cognitive sophistication. The signature hand axe was worked symmetrically on both sides into a teardrop shape that remained essentially unchanged for over 1,000,000 years. Creating such tools demanded a mental template, the ability to envision the finished product and execute a complex sequence of precise strikes to achieve that goal. But their greatest innovation was fire. Evidence from South Africa's Wonderwork Cave shows burnt bone and plant ash in layers dating back 1,000,000 years. It provided warmth in cold climates, protection from predators, light during dark hours, and a social focal point that encouraged group bonding and communication. Most critically, fire enabled cooking. Raw meat and plant foods contain toxins and tough fibers that limit their nutritional value. Cooking neutralizes poisons, breaks down difficult-to-digest compounds, and dramatically increases the calories available from any given food source. This dietary revolution likely fueled the final expansion of the human brain. Homo erectus used their new capabilities to achieve something no hominin had done before. They left Africa. Fossils appear across Asia from Georgia to Java, spanning environments from temperate woodlands to tropical forests. They were the first global species, demonstrating a level of behavioral flexibility and environmental adaptability that was unmistakably human. They weren't just surviving in these diverse landscapes, they were actively modifying them. They hunted large game animals to local extinction. They created the first truly artificial environments, spaces shaped by human technology and behavior rather than natural processes alone. So which species was the first human? The answer depends entirely on what criteria we choose, and that choice reveals more about us than about our ancestors. If walking upright defines humanity, then Sahelanthropus claimed the title nearly 7,000,000 years ago. If tool use marks the boundary, then some Australopithecine earned the distinction 3.3 million years ago. If we demand the full package, large brain, sophisticated tools, fire control, and global range, then Homo erectus stands alone. But the question itself assumes evolution works through sudden transformations, decisive moments, and clear boundaries. It doesn't. Evolution is a story of gradual becoming, not sudden being. Every fossil represents a transitional form, while carrying traits that would become crucial for future success. The search for the first human forces us to confront an uncomfortable truth about our own thinking. We crave categories, boundaries, and definitive answers. We want to know when we stopped being animals and became something more. But nature recognizes no such distinctions. The line between human and non-human exists only in our minds. Each species in our lineage was simultaneously primitive and advanced, holding on to ancestral traits while pioneering innovations that would define the future. Sahelanthropus walked upright, but thought like an ape. Australopithecus made tools, but climbed like a monkey. Homo erectus conquered fire, but retained the heavy brow ridges of their predecessors. The beautiful truth that emerges from millions of years of fossil evidence is that there was no moment when we became human. Instead, humanity assembled itself gradually through countless small adaptations to environmental challenges. Bipedalism emerged from forest fragmentation. Tool use developed from scavenging opportunities. Large brains evolved from the energy provided by processed foods. Fire control arose from the need to survive in new environments. Each innovation built upon the previous ones, creating feedback loops that accelerated our evolution towards something unprecedented, a species capable of consciously directing its own development. We are not the inevitable product of evolution, but its most unlikely outcome. Creatures that emerge from the ancient African landscape carrying the accumulated wisdom of millions of years of survival, adaptation, and change. The question, what was the first human species? Ultimately, teaches us that humanity was never a destination, but always a journey. We are not beings who happen to evolve, but evolution has become conscious of itself, carrying within our bones and brains the entire history of life's great experiment with intelligence, cooperation, and control over the natural world. That journey continues today, every time we ask where we came from and marvel at the improbable path that brought us here. The next time someone asks you what was the first human species, you'll know the question itself is beautifully impossible. Evolution doesn't deal in clean categories or decisive moments. It works through millions of years of gradual change, each fossil a snapshot of becoming rather than being. Our ancestors weren't trying to become human, they were simply surviving in a changing world, one adaptation at a time. The fact that their accumulated innovations eventually produced creatures capable of pondering their own origins is perhaps the most remarkable accident in the history of life on Earth.